Imagine standing on a busy street corner, watching people rush by, their faces turned away, ignoring the small, fragile girl holding a bouquet of wilting flowers. Her hands trembled from the cold, her eyes filled with silent desperation. She wasn't just selling flowers, she was fighting for her mother's life. What happened next will leave you speechless. Hello guys, welcome to Stories of Hope. Today, I am really excited to share a new story. One that will touch your heart and remind you of the incredible power of kindness. Before starting this story, let me know where you're watching this video from. Tell me the name of your city in the comments below. The evening sky over New York City was painted in hues of orange and purple. A deceptive beauty masking the harsh realities of life on its streets. Among the bustling crowd stood Lily, an 8-year-old girl with tangled hair and clothes too thin for the biting chill of early winter. In her small hands, she clutched a bundle of flowers wrapped in crumpled newspaper. Each flower represented $1 she desperately needed. Her mother lay in a hospital bed, her frail body ravaged by illness. The doctors said she needed surgery that cost more than Lily had ever seen in her life. Lily's voice was soft, almost drowned out by the roar of traffic and the chatter of passers-by. "Flowers for sale," she whispered, her throat raw from hours of pleading. No one stopped. Some glanced at her, their expressions a mix of pity and annoyance, before hurrying on. She hadn't eaten all day, but the hunger pangs were a distant concern compared to the weight pressing on her heart. Every rejection felt like another nail in her mother's coffin. Just as the last rays of sunlight began to fade, a sleek black limousine pulled up to the curb. Out stepped a man in an impeccably tailored suit, his shoes gleaming under the streetlights. His name was Alexander Hayes, a self-made millionaire who had clawed his way up from nothing. He was on his way to a gala, his mind occupied with the deals he planned to secure that night. But something about Lily caught his attention. Perhaps it was the way her small frame seemed to shiver under the weight of her struggles, or the tears threatening to spill from her tired eyes. He paused, much to the surprise of his driver and the hurried pedestrians around him. "Hey there," Alexander said, crouching down to her level. His voice was gentle but firm. "Why are you out here alone? Where are your parents?" Lily hesitated, clutching the flowers tighter. She had learned not to trust strangers, but something in his eyes, kindness maybe, made her answer. "My mom is sick. I'm trying to sell these flowers to pay for her surgery." Alexander's chest tightened. He knew the pain of a struggling family too well. He had lived it once, many years ago. But before he could respond, a sharp voice cut through the air. "Sir, we're running late," his driver reminded him. Alexander straightened, pulling out his wallet. "How much for all the flowers?" he asked. Lily's eyes widened. All of them. $30, sir." He handed her a crisp $100 bill. "Keep the change," he said. Then, as he glanced at her threadbare coat and pale face, an idea began to form. "Where's your mother?" he asked, his tone more serious now. Lily hesitated, then pointed toward the hospital down the street. Alexander nodded, a plan already taking shape in his mind. "Stay here," he said. "I'll be back." As he stepped back into his limousine, Lily watched him drive away, her heart a mix of hope and confusion. Little did she know, her life was about to change in ways she could never have imagined. Lily stood in the same spot, gripping the $100 bill as though it might vanish at any moment. Her mind raced with questions. Who was this man? Why had he been so kind? And most importantly, would he really come back? The cold wind whipped through the streets as the crowds thinned, but Lily didn't leave. She couldn't. That bill was a small miracle, enough to buy her mother's medication for a few days, but the man had said he'd return, and something about the way he spoke made her believe him. Inside the black limousine, Alexander Hayes couldn't shake the image of the frail girl standing alone under the glow of the streetlights. Her desperation had struck a chord he hadn't felt in years, bringing back memories of his own childhood. The days when his mother worked 3 jobs, skipping meals so he could eat. He had promised himself long ago that he'd never forget where he came from. Now, it was time to act on that promise. He instructed his driver to head straight to the hospital Lily had mentioned. When they arrived, he strode in with the confidence of a man used to commanding attention. After a brief conversation with the receptionist, he was directed to a small, dimly lit room. There lay Lily's mother, her face pale and sunken, her breaths shallow. The machines around her beeped rhythmically, a stark reminder of her fragile state. Beside her bed sat a nurse who explained that the woman's condition was critical. The surgery she needed was expensive and had to be done soon. Alexander's jaw tightened as he listened. He didn't hesitate. "I'll cover all the costs," he said firmly. "Make the arrangements immediately." The nurse's eyes widened in shock. "Are you sure, sir? This isn't a small amount." "I didn't ask for a discount," Alexander replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. As the hospital staff scrambled to finalize the paperwork, Alexander took a moment to sit beside Lily's mother. Though unconscious, she looked peaceful, as if some unseen burden had been lifted. He thought of Lily, waiting anxiously out in the cold. Back on the street, Lily's small figure had begun to slump with exhaustion. Her fingers ached, and her stomach growled, but she refused to leave. Every passing car made her heart leap, only for disappointment to crash down when it wasn't the sleek limousine she was hoping to see. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the black car reappeared, pulling up to the curb with a quiet hum. Alexander stepped out, his expression calm but determined. "Get in, Lily," he said, opening the door for her. Lily's eyes darted between him and the car. "Why? Where are we going?" "To see your mother," he replied. "I've taken care of everything." The words hit her like a wave, leaving her speechless. She climbed into the car, her tiny frame sinking into the luxurious seat. As they drove to the hospital, Alexander explained what he had done, his voice steady and reassuring. By the time they arrived, Lily's heart was pounding. The hospital looked even more intimidating at night, its bright lights casting harsh shadows on the walls. Alexander led her inside, guiding her to her mother's room. When Lily saw her mother, tears streamed down her face. Though still hooked up to machines, her mother looked more at ease than she had in weeks. A doctor approached, his expression kind. "Your mother is going to be okay," he said. "The surgery is scheduled for tomorrow morning, thanks to this man's generosity." Lily turned to Alexander, her voice shaking. "Thank you. I don't know how to repay you." "You don't need to," Alexander said, kneeling to her level. "Just promise me one thing, never lose hope, no matter how hard life gets." Lily nodded, her tears falling freely. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to believe that things might get better, but neither she nor Alexander knew that this was only the beginning of their journey together. The days following Lily's mother's surgery were a blur of healing and gratitude. Thanks to Alexander's unexpected intervention, Lily's mother was recovering faster than the doctors had expected. The hospital had been able to perform the operation just in time, and her vital signs were improving each day. Lily, who had once been consumed by the fear of losing everything, now smiled as she watched her mother sit up in bed, her color returning, her voice stronger. It was a miracle, one that Alexander had made possible. But this wasn't where the story ended. it was only the beginning. After the surgery, Alexander visited the hospital every day, checking on Lily's mother and offering support. His heart had been touched by their plight, but as he spent more time with them, he saw something in Lily that he hadn't expected, a spark of resilience and courage that reminded him of his own childhood. One afternoon, as Lily sat by her mother's side, Alexander approached her with a proposal. "I've been thinking," he said, sitting down beside her. "You're a remarkable young girl, and you've shown a strength that most adults can't even begin to understand. I'd like to help you and your mother get back on your feet, permanently. I want to help you with your education, your future." Lily stared at him, her eyes wide with disbelief. "You want to help me?" Alexander nodded. "I know what it's like to fight for a better life, and I don't want you to have to do that on your own. I'll make sure you have everything you need to succeed." Tears welled up in Lily's eyes again, but this time they were tears of hope. "But why? Why are you doing this for us?" "Because," Alexander said, "sometimes a small act of kindness can change the course of someone's life. You reminded me of the importance of never giving up, and I want to make sure you have a chance to build the life you deserve." Over the next few months, Lily and her mother settled into a new home, a place where they no longer had to worry about where their next meal would come from. Lily returned to school, her mind focused on her studies, and Alexander remained a constant presence in their lives, like a guardian angel, watching over them as they flourished. But the most profound change wasn't in the material things. It was in Lily herself. With every passing day, her belief in herself grew stronger, and she realized that no dream was too big, no obstacle too impossible. Years later, Lily stood in front of a crowd, her heart racing as she prepared to give a speech at her high school graduation. She looked out into the sea of faces, searching for the one that had always believed in her. And there, in the front row, sat Alexander Hayes, his eyes filled with pride. She owed her success to many people, but none more than him. The man who had once walked past a small, fragile girl selling flowers and stopped to change her life forever. Before she began her speech, Lily took a deep breath and smiled. "I want to thank someone who taught me the most important lesson of all, that kindness can change the world. Thank you, Alexander." As the crowd erupted in applause, Lily knew that her journey was far from over. The road ahead was long, but she was no longer afraid to walk it. If you were inspired by Lily's story, don't forget to subscribe to Stories of Hope for more heartwarming tales of transformation. Join us as we continue to share stories that remind us of the power of kindness, resilience, and hope.